I'm JasonUFC, and today we have a story about ESPN names their top 10 MMA fighters of all time. ESPN just named its top 10 men's, okay, so this is just for the men's MMA fighters of the 21st century. We will include the 90s, so this is just going to say of all time. Here's the top 10 MMA fighters of all time according to ESPN. Number 1, John Jones Bones. Number 2, George Rush St. Pierre. Number 3, Anderson the Spider Silva. Number 4, Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson, right? I think that's his nickname, Mighty Mouse. Number 5, Habib the Eagle Nurmagomedov. Number 6, Fedor the Last Emperor. I think that was his nickname, Emelianenko. Number 7, Randy. I have no idea what his nickname is. I'm going to say Randy Captain America Couture. Number 8, Chuck the Iceman, right? Liddell. Number 9, BJ the Prodigy Penn, okay. And number 10, Kamaru the Nigerian Nightmare Usman. Okay, so according to ESPN, that's the greatest MMA fighters of all time. This is a males list, so it does not include my girls, Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg. Those two obviously would be on anyone's list if we're talking about all MMA fighters of all time. I do want to preface this by saying I am a MMA casual, so I can't follow every single detail, but I do want to give my opinion about this list. There's, I would say 3 to 4 names that I would probably easily replace on this list. I'm not going to say the names on the list or as far as who I would take off, but I will mention the names who I would add to this list. Obviously, I already mentioned Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg, but other names that I would think some people should consider would be Israel Adesanya. I'm surprised that you have George Rush St. Pierre and Kamaru Usman, you know, the argument of greatest welterweights of all time, but they never fought. Yet Anderson Silva's on this list, and Israel Adesanya defeated Anderson Silva, right? And Anderson Silva tested, you know, not good on a test or two. So Israel Adesanya, I'm shocked, is not on this list. You look at this list, this is a boomers list. Let's really be honest. I think that's what the kids would call it, a boomers list. But other fighters who should be on this list, I would say Stipe Miocic, the greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time. Daniel Cormier, Jose Aldo. I would say, you know, Alexander Volkanovski, who many consider the greatest featherweight of all time. I mean, those are the names I would add to this list pretty easily. At least three of those names: Israel Adesanya, Jose Aldo, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, or Alexander Volkanovski. And as far as the Conor McGregor thing, you know, even though I am an MMA casual, I wouldn't add Conor McGregor to this list because he never defended the featherweight title. He never defended the lightweight title. So I personally couldn't add Conor McGregor to this list. Another name on the outside looking in very closely would be Alex Pereira, the current UFC light heavyweight champion. Alex Pereira was the former middleweight champion. If Alex Pereira moves up to the heavyweight division, and wins the heavyweight championship, Alex Pereira would be the first fighter in the UFC history to be a 3-weight champion. So if Alex Pereira moves up to the heavyweight division, become champion, you have to include Alex Pereira to this list. But if he did move up, he'd have to face someone like John Jones, who is currently number 1 on this list. And I 1,000% agree with John Jones being number 1 on anyone's list of greatest MMA fighters of all time. The reason why I have always considered John Jones the greatest fighter of all time is that if you look at John Jones' record, if you look at his opponents, John Jones defeated opponents who, before fighting John Jones, were champions. Before fighting John Jones, names were in the books of the Hall of Fame. And then John Jones also fought people who, after fighting John Jones, became champions. After fighting John Jones, got their name in the Hall of Fame. Let's look at the names of John Jones, who John Jones defeated, who after fighting John Jones became champion, right? They fought John Jones for a belt. They lost. But after fighting John Jones, they fought a different opponent and showed that they are that good. Daniel Cormier, 2-weight division champion in the UFC light heavyweight division and the UFC heavyweight division after John Jones. Glover Teixeira lost to John Jones after fighting John Jones, became UFC light heavyweight champion. Ryan Bader, I believe that fight was way back in the days. I believe both of them were undefeated at that point. I think John Jones finished him with an arm triangle. Don't quote me on this. Like I said, I am an MMA casual. There's just no way this could be possible. But I believe they were both undefeated when John Jones fought Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader went on to move on to Bellator, became light heavyweight champion and heavyweight champion. But when he fought John Jones, he lost. Brandon Vera, very nasty elbow from the top by John Jones, lost to John Jones, Brandon Vera. But Brandon Vera, I believe, went to ONE FC. Is it ONE FC or is it ONE Championship? I've never seen it. But I believe Brandon Vera was like heavyweight champion in ONE FC or ONE Championship. So you look at names: Daniel Cormier, Glover Teixeira, Ryan Bader, Brandon Vera. After fighting John Jones, they became champion. Now look at the names that before fighting John Jones, they were in the champion. They won champions, and they were in basically the Hall of Fame. Let's look at the names of John Jones' opponents. Once again, look at the names of his opponents. It's not just performance, right? It's who did you defeat? John Jones defeated names like Rampage Jackson, Shogun Rua, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Alexander Gustafsson, right? A lot of people thought John Jones lost that first fight versus Gustafsson. John Jones ended up finishing Gustafsson in the second fight. But if you look at Rashad Evans, former UFC light heavyweight champion, right? Lyoto Machida, former UFC light heavyweight champion. Rampage, former champion. Shogun, former champion. Vitor, former champion. Chael, former contender. Gustafsson, former contender, right? So these names, you look at these names, it's like, man, did John Jones really defeat all of those opponents? Right? So named before fighting John Jones, these people were champions. They were feared, fighting someone like Rampage Jackson. Even John Jones said, he was just like, this is, before that fight, it was a little bit, a little bit of nerves there because Rampage was a monster, Lyoto Machida, John Jones, I think, lost that first round versus Machida, right? Shogun Rua, Vitor Belfort. You remember that fight with Vitor Belfort and John Jones? In the first round, Vitor Belfort got John Jones in an armbar, basically took his arm out, and John Jones defeated Belfort like in the third or fourth round by submitting him. John Jones has put work in before and after of fighters who were like names in the sport of MMA. How many people can name any opponent Demetrius Johnson fought, right? Dobson and Henry Cejudo. Besides that, I'm an MMA casual. Those are only two names I can name, right? Khabib Nurmagomedov, God bless him. And the names he defeated, these are official names. These are great names, but none of them went on to become champion, right? So it's just like, that's my reason as to why I've always said John Jones was the greatest MMA fighter. Before fighting John Jones, if you were a champion, if you were in a Hall of Fame, you would fight John Jones, you would lose. After fighting John Jones, if you were never a champion, were never in the Hall of Fame, right? You lost to John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Glover Teixeira, Ryan Bader, Brandon Vera, right? After fighting John Jones, they became champion. You can't say that about a lot of the opponents of the names on the names on this list, right? A lot of the opponents after fighting these names, after fighting St. Pierre, that was the top. After fighting Silva, that was the top. After getting to the belt versus Johnson, that was the top for their opponents, right? John Jones he was meeting people who were, at the top, and he was also meeting people who, after fighting John Jones, became champion, right? So that's why I've always said John Jones is the greatest MMA fighter of all time, but I am a MMA casual, so what the hell do I know? Let me know your opinion of this story. Who are names you agree with on this list, and who are names you would add to this list? Let's be respectful. Let's not take any names off this list. All these fighters have put in work, you know, for the sport that we all love. But who are fighters who you would add to this list? Like I said, obviously, besides Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg, my two girls, they clearly have to be on anyone's MMA list. You would have to add Israel Adesanya, Jose Aldo, Stipe Miocic, right? Those are the names I would add to this list. But let me know your opinion of this story. I am Jason UFC. Today we had a story about ESPN releases their top 10 MMA fighters, male MMA fighters of all time, and John Bones Jones is number 1. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.